My name is Anna. I still remember the look on my mother's face when I laid out the evidence at my grandfather's 80th birthday party. It was a mix of shock, anger, and a hint of fear. The room fell silent as I began to speak, and I knew that everything was about to change. It all started on that fateful Thanksgiving. I had spent weeks preparing for the family gathering. I set 8 places at the table, with pressed linen and hand-lettered name cards. I even bought a twin of my mother's good gravy boat to feel closer to her. But as the hours passed, the chairs remained empty. My parents didn't show up. My brother, Lucas, 32, texted an excuse, and my sister, Lily, 35, posted a photo of the dinner she was hosting instead. I sat at the head of the table, alone, crying into the food that no one else would taste. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my grandfather, Henry, walked in out of the snow. He was 80 that winter, and he'd had a fall in September that left him a bit foggy. He pressed an old envelope into my hand and said, "I should have given you this years ago. Emma made me promise, and I'm an old coward who kept the promise to everyone but you." I had no idea who Emma was. The name meant nothing to me, but it also meant everything. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside were a photograph, a folded letter, and a birth certificate. I unfolded the birth certificate first. There, on the line marked Mother, was the name Emma Thompson. I was not adopted out of charity, I was a Thompson by blood. My grandfather then told me the story. Emma was his youngest daughter, my mother. She was 26 when she died in a car accident on a February day when I was almost 2. After her death, my uncle, Ryan, Emma's brother, and his wife, my mother, Sarah, took me in. But Sarah had just lost her 3rd baby that winter, and the house was tight. They decided to keep my true identity a secret, making me believe I was just a guest in their family. I remembered all the times I felt like an outsider. My birthdays were often forgotten, I wore Lily's outgrown clothes, and my achievements were never celebrated like hers. I always thought it was my fault, that I wasn't good enough. But now I knew the truth. After learning the truth, my grandfather told me he needed my help. Since the fall, Sarah had taken over his affairs. He said his accounts felt lighter, and Ryan had asked him to sign a paper about the house where Emma grew up. I could sense the fraud, as I'm a CPA in Denver. November is the season of dealing with estates and trusts, and I know how numbers can lie and tell the truth. I started to follow the money. Grandpa had signed a durable power of attorney in March, naming Sarah as his agent. But starting in April, money began to leave his accounts in steady, deliberate amounts. $12,000 went to Lily in May, tagged as a loan, and $9,000 went to Lucas in June, also a loan with no intention of repayment. The account Grandpa had set aside for my care was drained to almost nothing by autumn. I also found a half-finished will in Sarah's email, cutting small bequests to old friends and folding everything to Lily and Lucas, and an unsigned purchase agreement for the sale of the house. I read the letter from Emma again that night. She wrote about how much she loved me and how she'd put aside a little money for me so I'd never feel like a charity. I realized that the account they'd drained was my mother's last gift to me. I knew I had to do something. I made an appointment with an elder law attorney, Grace Miller. I laid out the case for her, including the power of attorney, the transfers, the drained care account, and the pending sale of the house. Grace said what I was describing might be a breach of fiduciary duty and that we had some options, like petitioning the court for a formal accounting and suspending the power of attorney. They found out I was looking. Sarah called me, her voice cold. "I hear you've been poking around your grandfather's accounts. You need to stay out of family business." I calmly replied, "He asked me to look." She laughed and said, "He's confused, and you're just making a drama out of things. You were never really one of us." But I had the birth certificate and the letter from my mother, and I wasn't going to back down. "You're right. I was never one of you, but I'm something you should have been more careful about," I said and hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, I built a record. With Grandpa's consent and Grace as a witness, we requested the full histories of every account. I built a timeline in a spreadsheet, documenting every transfer since March. The evidence was undeniable, a parade of small thefts dressed as loans. I almost felt sorry for Sarah. I found old papers that showed she'd lost her third pregnancy in October and then had to take me in when her grief was still raw. There were even records of her staying up with me through a fever. But then I saw that she knew exactly what the drained account was for. She'd read Emma's letter and still spent the money on a luxury car for Lily. I gave Ryan a chance. I drove to his place and showed him the letter from Emma. For a moment, I thought he might help me. But then he slid the letter back, saying, "Dad's fine. Sarah's taking good care of him. Let it go." Lily heard I'd been snooping and moved to push the house sale through before anything could stop it. She started clearing out the smaller accounts. I was in a panic, but Grace talked me down. We filed for emergency relief, asking the court to freeze the house sale and suspend Sarah's power of attorney. 2 days later, the court issued a temporary order. The power of attorney was suspended, and the house sale was frozen. Grandpa's money was finally safe. And then came his 80th birthday party. Sarah had planned it like a coronation to show she was the devoted caregiver. I wasn't invited, but I decided to go. I brought a binder full of evidence and Grace, my lawyer. When I walked into the house, the party stopped. Ryan went pale, Lucas froze, and Lily's smile curdled. Sarah came at me, hissing, "What are you doing here? This is family only." But then my grandfather, Henry, spoke up. "Anna stays. And the rest of you are going to sit down and listen to what she found." I walked to the table and set the binder down. I said, "Most of you don't know who I am. My mother's name was Emma Thompson. I'm not the kindness this family took in. I'm the daughter you hid. And in the last few weeks, I've been reading the records of what's been done to Grandpa since his fall." I opened the binder and started to read. I talked about the power of attorney and how Sarah misused it. I showed the transfers to Lily and Lucas, and the drained care account. Sarah's face turned red with anger as I spoke, but I stayed calm. She tried to attack me, saying, "You're ungrateful. You were always just a kindness." But I reached into the binder and pulled out the birth certificate. I was Emma's daughter. Her name is right here. And I'm the one who protected your father. Grandpa then said, "She's mine, Emma's girl. I've been ashamed for all these years that I let them make her a stranger in her own family." Just as Sarah reached for the binder to scatter the pages, Grace stepped forward. "I wouldn't. Everything in that binder is already filed. The court has issued a temporary order. Sarah, your power of attorney is suspended, and the sale of the house is frozen." The room was in shock. Lucas sat down hard, Lily was on the phone, and Sarah stood there, speechless. I closed the binder. I hadn't raised my voice once. Grandpa reached out his hand to me. "I don't want it handled by family anymore. I want a stranger watching my money." I told him and the whole room that I wasn't there for an inheritance. I just wanted to protect him. In the end, the court appointed a neutral fiduciary to oversee Grandpa's care and finances. Some of the money came back, and the loans were called in. Sarah never apologized, and Ryan's apology was half-hearted. I stopped waiting for Lily and Lucas to understand. This Thanksgiving, I set the table again. Grandpa was at the head, where he belonged. There were also Grace, who turned out to be lonely on holidays, a friend from work, a neighbor, and her kids. The spiced pear pie, a recipe that had been passed down from Emma, sat in the center of the table. And when I cut it, I told them all whose recipe it really was. I learned that family isn't about blood or the papers that bind you. It's about the people who choose to stand by you and the love that goes beyond obligation. The cruelest thing they ever did was make me think I had to earn a family, but the best thing I ever did was stop believing them.